Welcome to this meeting and roundtable at the European Parliament. I want to introduce our two speakers and experts, Eva Haikila, a lawyer based in London, and Harry Kualampi, the assistant of MEP Hannu Takkula. I'm very happy that you could be available for this roundtable because this afternoon there was a very good event about the European arrest warrant that is in question in a number of EU member states. An event that was chaired by Mr. Hannu Takkula and well attended by quite a number of people from various countries, coming from Sweden, from Denmark, and from other European countries. Why such an interest in the MEP Hannu Takkula in this issue? You are his assistant. Can you tell us a bit more about his interest?
Well, I think that there are two issues. I think that one is the rule of law as a basic European principle. European societies or any society cannot function without a firm basis on the rule of law. So that is one thing, and I think that Mr. Takkula wants to secure that it remains like that. But then the other issue is the human rights. And here we saw some clashes in this issue, and it seems that we need to really discuss a little bit further this whole issue, how to maintain the rule of law while also maintaining the human rights.
Yeah. Okay, Mrs. Haikila, I have one specific question. I know that as a barrister you are involved in the case of Alexander Adamescu, which is a victim, I would say, of European arrest warrant. Would
Absolutely.
that be your approach? But also a victim as the son of someone, his father, who died in prison quite recently. Could you elaborate a little bit about the case of his father? Why was he in prison? And also, why is there a European arrest warrant against his son?
Well, the case against the father and the case against the son are both huge entities in themselves. And to explain them in their full gory and glorious detail would take quite a long time. But in a nutshell, the European arrest warrant against the son, Alexander, stems solely on the fact that he is the son of Dan Adamescu. The real victim of persecution, well, the original victim of persecution here is Dan Adamescu. He's, of course, well, he was probably one of the most successful businessmen, independent businessmen in Romania. He was very well known for his strong stance on being separate from the government and running entities that were independent and hugely critical of the government. Now, this is the root of the persecution. People were unable to understand that the criticism expressed by, for say, Romania Libera was not criticism expressed by Dan. It was a criticism made by a purely independent newspaper. And in order to silence this newspaper, in order to grab their assets, this whole trail of persecution was set in motion.
I think the official accusation is that he was bribing judges for specific issues. Could you explain us your point of view about this sort of charge?
Right. This charge came about at a time when a whole lot of things had already gone wrong. The assets were already stolen. Criminal cases were already being looked at. This was all fabricated and politically motivated. I would say that the final charge that he was eventually then tried for was cherry on the cake. Right. Two individuals who made this allegation have been found to be incredible. the evidence that they have put forward has been cast into doubt. And above all, the allegation that he would have bribed these judges in the proceedings concerning one of his businesses, they didn't actually benefit him in any way. So even the investigators don't allege that he would have actually gained anything by allegedly doing that. Of course, he denies any wrongdoing, Alex, which is who's charged with the same, pretty much identical offences. Not only is there no, I would say, having looked at the case, there's no prima facie case, but it just doesn't make sense.
It was said in quite a number of British media that it was a politically motivated case.
Absolutely.
Which politicians, which political party might have been behind this sort of maneuver, accusation?
Well, whether it was instigated by certain party or certain prime minister, in my view as a lawyer, it doesn't matter, because they have the responsibility of their own government. The ruling party and the prime minister in office has responsibility to make sure that his deputies, his officers, his party doesn't persecute anybody. But there is, of course, evidence that the Social Democratic Party and Victor Ponta were crucial in many things that went wrong. I mean, this is widely reported in the media. And I would say this has been noted in the think tanks reports, intelligence reports, the witness statements by individuals would point to this fact. And I'm sure that if one wanted to find out who is behind the persecution, Alex would be happy to stand the trial, if it's fair. I mean, Alex, I'm confident, has nothing to hide. Dan Adamescu was happy to stand trial on the condition that it's fair.
Yeah. So Alexander Adamescu is still living and working in London. It could be surrendered to the Romanian authorities at any time this year. What sort of evidence do you have that the judicial system in Romania is not reliable and that a fair trial could not be envisaged in this case?
Well, of course, there are a number of reports by the civil society. There are,
for example,
a number of cases. I would place most of my analysis on the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. Of course, the reports prepared by NGOs and think tanks, they are very important, and they are probably very well researched, and the analysis carried out by qualified people. But I would look at the European Court of Human Rights, where they say that the prison standards and the right to a fair trial are not up to scratch in Romania.
And that probably explains why the father, Dan Adamescu, died in prison. Don't you think that in his case he was 68, that there could have been another way of serving his sentence?
Absolutely. He could have stayed at home, for example, in house arrest.
With a bracelet on his ankle, for example.
There are a number of ways a person can serve a sentence in a modern society.
There were attempts by the lawyers in Romania to try to favor an alternative way of serving.
Absolutely. He applied
and what was the answer of the authorities?
Well, he applied for bail and a parole on maybe 5 occasions. This was denied, and the grounds for this denial was that he hasn't admitted his guilt, which is, of course, a very bizarre legal concept.
Yes, of course.
But more alarming here is the fact that he applied for bail on medical grounds. There's a systematic record of his representatives going before a judge and saying that he will not survive in prison. Well, he had multiple medical issues, and for one of those issues, he then needed to have an operation, and he then got an infection, and then he didn't survive this. But this is not something that was not known to the prison authorities.
does his son plan to go to the European Court in the case of the death of his father in prison, because it's the duty of the state to take care and to protect its citizens?
It's still very raw. It's only just happened. I don't know about that yet. However, when these things were still going on and the prison conditions were still being discussed, I suggested to Alex that he should file a case at the UN.
Human
For
Rights
example-
Committee? you
Yes,
mean?
for example, Committee Against Torture,
Yes.
or the Human Rights Committee, concerning the prison conditions. And Alex told me that he did not wish to do that because, to use his words, he said, "Dad will be free soon." And he said, "There's no need. He will have served his sentence very soon. He's going to walk free." So he didn't want to file a complaint at that point.
So now coming back to the case of Alexander Adamescu, how do you see his near future from a legal point of view?
Well, he faces an uphill struggle
Yes.
with regards to the extradition request. The EAWs are extremely difficult to challenge. As was discussed today, it is not so much a mechanism for extradition, it's more a mechanism of surrender. The courts have picked up on this, and in the case of Aranjosi, it was recognized that the judges ought to look at the human rights conditions in the requesting country. Whether this is a set policy now, I have my doubts. But in a sense, there is no effective way to introduce human rights arguments in the EAW proceedings. That's the heart of the problem.
So you would be in favor of reform of the EAW system?
Well, it must be reformed.
Must be reformed. Yeah. So what about this reform, seen from Brussels, from through the lens of the European Parliament and maybe the glasses of an MEP or his assistant?
Well, it seems that there is yet only very little interest among the MEPs to work for this reform, but we will start working on it. And definitely there is a point, and it needs to be discussed and evaluated and probably reformed. And we are open for good suggestions.
Yeah, so I was in contact recently with some members of the Libe committee, and it seems that they are aware that due to the passivity of the European Commission, that some new initiatives should be taken to try to again put in the radar the issue of the reform of the European arrest warrant. What could be done concretely to raise awareness in the EU community and especially the EU Commission?
It seems that the European Parliament has a key role, and any issue can be raised here. And of course, the Commission has to follow those issues which are discussed here, and at least should. We will definitely do our best in order to raise this issue.
What about, for example, a parliamentary question?
Well, definitely. Actually, we have already sent one question to the Commission.
Yes.
But I think that there should be a proper discussion within the Parliament on these issues.
Yeah. And in which, I would say, institutional framework? You mean the Libe committee or another?
Yeah, probably
another?
the Libe committee. I'm not sure exactly which of the committees would be the best to take up this issue. But
you heard some of the experts this afternoon. Iago Russell from Fair Trials, also Oliver Panecker, a German lawyer based in Warsaw and close to the OSCE. and of course Mrs. Haikila from London. What are your impressions from their testimonies and statements and analysis that they made of the European arrest warrant?
Well, I think that the arguments were very clear and very straightforward and easy to understand, even from this kind of layperson's point of view. And I think that there is definitely a clear case now, and we kind of got a foundation to start working on this. I was actually very happy about today's conference, because sometimes issues like this can be very boring and very remote from the reality, but this was technical enough in order to make it clear.
It was very technical, of course.
But
yeah,
it was also close to the very human level and real human experience. So it touched our hearts and provoked our emotions.
We are on the eve of the Brexit, and so the case involves the UK and Romania. How do you think that the Brexit might impact the case of Alexander Adamescu?
Well, for all its faults, the EAW has been a helpful tool in some cases. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest to abolish the whole concept of such mechanism. Of course, there are bilateral extradition treaties which should have inbuilt human rights safeguards, but I think there is a place for pan-European mechanism to fight cross-border crime. It's very difficult to say what would happen in the case of Brexit. It appears not even our Prime Minister knows that. But there is a fear that we might end up in a situation where there is no bars to extradition, and a number of people would be simply deported or extradited without any consideration of their well-being. That is the doomsday scenario when it comes to extradition. So it's important to keep some structures in place. And where there is no bilateral extradition treaty, have one. But it might be a good idea to keep the EAW in a reformed form.
Yes, but
for the moment.
The Prime Minister has announced that the UK would withdraw from the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg, which means a withdrawal from the EAW system. Because it's
I'm not sure
hard,
if
it's a hard Brexit that was announced.
I'm not sure if that's a sound proposition to make from the Prime Minister, because if she then has a bilateral treaty with the whole of Europe or one country, you need an adjudicator for that treaty. And obviously that would be then the European Court. Because you need to have some kind of legal authority to sanction remedies if there's a violation of that treaty. So she would end up having to go back to exactly the same court, but that's another debate. This is what I mean, that the whole Brexit thing is not all intelligent as it's perhaps made out to be. When it comes to extradition, I would very much caution against lifting the current regime completely. There is a need for a structure when it comes to extraditions. But a reform.
So next month, Article 50 will be activated. In April, there will be a hearing about the case of Mr. Adamescu.
Yes.
What do you expect from that hearing?
It's
or what do you fear?
Very, very difficult to say what to expect. On the one hand, it might be that the Romanian state will put no evidence forward whatsoever. That has happened in other cases. Or it could be that we are sent tons of files which we would struggle to go through. So it's difficult to say what to expect. There's no cases that are alike at the end of the day. My worst fear would be, in a way, a summary hearing where the judge would simply say, we have agreed to this mechanism, we are part of this mechanism, we will not hear your arguments here, you can make your arguments in the requesting jurisdiction, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
That would probably be the worst case scenario.
So in this concrete case of Mr. Alexander Damescu, what could an MEP do to clarify such a situation?
I think that there are several things an MEP can do. Questions to the Commission.
The Council as well?
Council as well. But there are also several arenas within the Parliament where this can be discussed.
For example?
I think that this kind of a report can be written on the issue. And I think that within the MEPs, like-minded MEPs, can talk about this and think about ways how they can get more people involved. And now I think that we already know that there are several MEPs who are interested in the issue.
I think that the Council of Europe, there is a motion for a resolution about the case of Alexander Damescu. Could a motion for a resolution be introduced in the European Parliament?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, I thank you very much for this very friendly debate about a very serious case that raises a lot of concern. That individual case of Alexander Damescu, but the whole issue of the European arrest warrant, where there are many flaws in the legislation and the implementation of the legislation, and we hope that the EU institutions will make some steps forward very quickly to try to improve the situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.